Going on, everybody? Smitty from around the 412 here, another previewing the opponent. It is Jaguars week. One of my favorite matchups in terms of Steelers opponents that are like kind of like rivals, but not within the division. Like these two teams have hated each other seemingly for a long time. Jaguars the only team to beat the Steelers twice at home in the same season, and they've done it twice. I mean, that's you go back to the 2017 season where you really felt like the Steelers had a shot to go for it all and finally dethrone the Patriots. The Jaguars knock us out 45-42 at home in the playoffs. And since then, not a whole lot of postseason success for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, so let's dive into this matchup a little bit, though, because their last game that they played against each other, 2020, doesn't seem like that long ago, right? But if you look at the two rosters, huge amount of turnover on both sides. I mean, Jake Luton was starting at quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now they have Trevor Lawrence. Travis Etienne was obviously not there. Christian Kirk was not there. Calvin Ridley was not there. A lot of the offensive line has been turned over. On the defensive side of things, Devin Lloyd was not there. Foye Oluokun was not there. Tyson Campbell, Cisco. Like, so much turnover since that 2020 season for Jacksonville. And you look at the Steelers, obviously, Big Ben's not here. Chase Claypool, who caught a touchdown in the game, not here. Eric Ebron, who caught a touchdown in that game, not here. James Conner was the starting running back. Benny Snell was on the roster. James Washington was here. Juju Smith-Schuster was here. Huge amount of turnover on both sides. Stephon Tuitt, Bud Dupree, those guys on the defense. Terrell Edmonds had 2 picks. You get my point. Huge amount of turnover on both teams since they last played. But I want to dive into the numbers for the 2023 Jacksonville Jaguars, who, in my opinion, are a top 5 to 7 team right now in the NFL. I think they're just so well-rounded. Let's look at the defensive side of the football first. Okay, so total yards, 23rd, but this is just the surface stats, and then we'll look at more into it. 31st in terms of passing yards allowed, 4th in terms of rushing yards allowed, 16th in points, 7th in third down percentage. Now, you might be looking at that and saying, oh, okay, so the Steelers should be able to throw the ball. The thing is, that's a volume stat, right? That's a counting stat that we can look at and say, on the surface, it looks pretty bad. But when you go back and watch these games, Gardner Minshew throw in 55 times against them, right? Like, obviously, he's going to have a ton of passing yards. Teams are playing catch up against the Jaguars for large portions of the game. Therefore, they're throwing the football a lot. Also, with how good they are on the ground, just 4th, giving up just a chunk over 80 yards per game. They are going to be throwing the football a lot, as teams have against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I don't think that they're as bad as it looks like they are in terms of allowing passing yards on the back end. Tyson Campbell's a really good player. Darius Williams is a really good player. Cisco is a really good player. Rayshon Jenkins is a good player. Trey Herndon's okay. Buster Brown, okay player, who actually, that was the guy that the Saints were kind of targeting in that game without Tyson Campbell. And he held his own, I thought, especially like down the stretch, last play of the game, that's who they're targeting there, and he held his own. So I think that the Jaguars' back end is probably a little bit underrated, and their defense as a whole, I think, is a little bit underrated. EPA per play, 7th. Success rate, 6th. Drop back EPA, 6th. Drop back success rate, 9th. Rushing EPA, 13th. Rushing success rate, 3rd. This is a good defense, in my opinion. I think that when you have guys at every level, and we'll talk about, like, Trayvon Walker, obviously, the conversation about should he have been the first overall pick. I don't think so. But he's definitely a very good run defender. And we'll see if he can continue to come into his own as a pass rusher. As of right now, what you got is a really good run defender. On the other side of him, Josh Allen's a dude. I mean, I don't know that he's a superstar. I don't think he's like a TJ Watt level pass rusher, but I think he's a star. I think he's in like that second tier of pass rushers in the NFL. And then you look at their off-ball linebackers, who I think have a case, maybe behind the 49ers, the conversation starts for where those guys rank. Devin Lloyd, I'm a huge fan of. Foye Oluokun continues to do his thing, 3 straight years leading the league in tackles, which, that's a stat that, a lot of people try to discredit or write off. I don't think it's the most important, but I mean, to have a guy that can clean up a lot of plays, that's obviously very important. He's got coverage skills as well. He can do a lot of things for them. And then they have like some rotational guys like Chad Muma that can play in the rotation, off-ball linebacker as well. And then on the back end, like I've talked about, Tyson Campbell, to me, top 10-ish corner in the league. And I don't know that he's getting that type of credit. I actually have a video on my personal channel talking about, most underrated guys at each position. I think he's one of the more underrated cornerbacks in the NFL. Darius Williams, who, maybe didn't get off to the best start in Jacksonville after getting a little bit of money coming over from the Rams. He's played really good football this year. I think he's playing as well as any corner right now in the NFL. Andre Cisco, just a ball hawking safety. Rayshawn Jenkins is a good, not great player. I think that's what it is, right? Like, I think there's a lot of good players on this defense that aren't like of that great superstar. Like Josh Allen is clearly the star of this defense. Everybody else fills in nicely. They have a lot of really good players. I don't know if there's anybody else that's a great player, and that's probably why they get discredited a little bit. But as a unit this year, they're playing some really good, sound football. So I looked at the Steelers offense and the way they're going to be able to attack them. I think you got to get these running backs involved as pass catchers. They just gave up 12 receptions to Alvin Kamara. They've given up 6 receptions to Zach Moss, who is not a pass-catching running back by any means. So I think that's an area where they can be had. I look at the tight ends, too. The Steelers have not utilized their tight ends. But this is a team that gave up 95 yards to Jonnu Smith. They gave up about 70 to Kylan Granson. So, whether it's Darnell Washington, whether it's Connor Hayward, get Hot Rod Rodney Williams involved too if you want. Like, these guys are going to have to be factors because they've been really good. And I think that George Pickens and Diontae Johnson, I trust those guys to be able to win their matchups quite a bit. But when I look at what the weaknesses of the Jaguars have been, I think those two position groups are going to have to be able to contribute some in order to open things up for those other guys. So I look at that. And then I look at the other side, the Jaguars offense going against the Steelers defense here. Joey Porter Jr., I expect to see him make his first start. Levi Wallace, don't even know if he's going to play in this one. But even if he does, Joey Porter Jr. overtook him in terms of snaps last week against LA. And I think Joey has been put in the position to start on the boundary this game. So who is he going to see a lot of? Is it going to be Calvin Ridley? Christian Kirk plays a lot in the slot, but if he does line up outside, we'll see no Zay Jones in this one for the Jaguars, which is a factor in my opinion. So we'll see. But Darius Rush and Luke Barku, I don't know what's going on there. I think that's more of an indication of where James Pierre is. He just got hurt on the last play of practice on Thursday. So I don't know if he's going to be able to go at all, but you're looking for guys that can maybe give you something on special teams and have to be ready in case of an emergency. I'm curious between those two, which one would see snaps on defense first. Because they're both, boundary corners. Like Patrick Peterson's probably going to play a lot in the slot in this game. Shannon Sullivan's going to play a lot. But would it be Darius Rush or Luke Barku first is my question. Darius Rush, I think, is the more talented player, but he got here pretty recently. How much of this defense has he really become familiar with? Do you throw him to the fire in a way that you obviously didn't with Joey Porter Jr., but didn't necessarily have to either? Like in this case, this is almost like a break glass in case of emergency situation where we're at with this cornerback room right now with these injuries. So I'm very curious if those guys have to play and what they're going to look like. The Steelers also run defense, giving up over 140 yards right now on the ground, and Travis Etienne has been on fire. 6 touchdowns in his last 3 games. He's got 7 on the season. So, we're talking about this passing attack that the Jaguars have with Trevor Lawrence and these weapons on the outside, Evan Ingram as well being a factor there. But Travis Etienne is really, I think, where you got to shut things down first and foremost, especially with the way that the weather's going to be playing into this as well. I think the Jaguars are going to want to run the football, and weather's going to kind of dictate them having to do so. Steelers, who have not been great in terms of giving up yardage on the ground, again, 140 plus yards per game right now on the ground. They're going to have to find a way to slow this rushing attack of the Jaguars down with Travis Etienne, even Tank Bigsby. I'll throw him in there as well. And Trevor Lawrence is a pretty mobile quarterback. I know he's dealing with a little bit of a knee injury, but that didn't stop him in that Thursday night football game against the Saints from using his mobility and extending plays and even at times taking off. So I think he's somebody that you got to keep an eye on as well. Pretty good athlete at the quarterback position. Really curious as to how this secondary is going to match up with these receivers, with the injuries, obviously, but also just like what the new faces that they're going to have to see time because of those injuries. I think it's going to be a tall task for the Steelers on Sunday to overcome the elements. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the weather. I just think that the Jaguars have a lot of answers for the questions the Steelers could present them with. When you talk about the matchups that they're going to get on the outside, the problems that Etienne is going to cause for them as a guy that can run between the tackles and also get them out in space where the Steelers have not been very good at tackling. If he's able to stretch them out horizontally and vertically, how are the Steelers going to respond to that? They're going to need, an 11-man effort on every single play on Sunday in order to be able to slow down this Jaguars offense. For the Steelers offense going against their defense, again, I like Pickens and Diontae. I think that they're going to for sure be able to get theirs. But if you don't get those running backs involved in the pass game, if you don't get the tight ends involved in the pass game, I don't like the Steelers' chances in this one overall. Are they going to be able to continue the success that they had running the football against the Rams in the second half? And is that going to carry over into this one? I mentioned Jaguars fourth best in the NFL in terms of rushing yards allowed. And, that's an interesting matchup too. They could be getting some guys back. Davon Hamilton could be back in the interior of that defensive line. And he's a really good player for them. Mason Cole, I think Isaac Seumalo, who's played really good football recently. They're going to have to be ready to go and have their best effort on Sunday for this one. Really looking forward to this one. I think it's a great benchmark to see where the Steelers are at, because if they are able to come away with a win in this one, man, sets up nicely. Short week against Tennessee, and then you got the Packers at home as well. 3 straight at home. I mean, if you get past this one, if you get a win against the Jaguars here, nothing's guaranteed, but you could be looking at a 7-2 start to the season, which obviously I think we would all be ecstatic about. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We got a long way to go before that. In this one, I don't think a loss is a death sentence either. I will say that, because predictively, I am saying the Jaguars win this one 27-21. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but just hear me out on this. I think if the Steelers show up, they have a decent offensive performance, carry over a lot of things that they showed in that fourth quarter, specifically against the Rams in this one, and are able to do it for a longer period of time, a more extended period of time, and play a more complete game on the offensive side of the football. I don't think that a loss here to Jacksonville is a death sentence to the season, especially if you rebound nicely on a short week against Tennessee, and then you got, a mini bye before the Packers come to town too. I think that the Jaguars win this one. I just think on paper right now, with the way they are, with the injuries that the Steelers are dealing with, not having Cam Hayward back just quite yet, I just think the Jaguars in a better place. And again, I think they're a top 5 to 7 team in football. I think the Steelers are more in that like 10 to 15-ish range. So this is a really good team that the Steelers have coming to town on Sunday, and I don't think a loss to them is a death sentence to the 2023-2024 season. So that's how I'm feeling about the game. I think that's how the Steelers and Jaguars match up with each other. There is a path here for the Steelers to win this game for sure. I just think, again, this I'm in the Jaguars' favor. I think that they have the elements. I think they have the recipe to be able to defeat the Steelers on Sunday. So I think they will do so. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, how you feel like this game plays out, what you think the keys to success are. I have another short talking about the keys for the Steelers offense going against the Jaguars defense. It's a lot of stuff that I touched on in here as well and threw in. But let me know how you're feeling. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave me a comment, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.